Did Joker 2 kill the comic book movie industry? No. Thanks for watching, everyone. Oh wait, I suppose you want more, Your Majesty. So Joker 2 came out a little over a month ago, and it was, to put it politely, a bit of a disaster. It was devoid of anything that I would really call substance. It always felt like it was on the verge of saying something. It wanted to discuss our obsession with true crime and murders and how we almost anthologize these people. Mythologize these people. But yet, somehow, it never really came to anything. Now, if the first Joker was like a 12-ounce steak with roasted potatoes and garlic bread, Joker 2 was like an expired pudding cup with like mold on the top. It was a terrible follow-up. As with most overreactions whenever a comic book movie bombs, a question is asked. Is the comic book movie dead? Did Joker get the last laugh and actually kill an entire industry? The short answer is no. The long answer is a little more complicated. The comic book film industry is not like any other major business. There will always be hills and valleys, dips and climbs. It's like anything else. Let's examine the MCU as the most relevant example post the Endgame high. I dive more into it into my Marvel Has Wrestling Problem, shameless plug, go check out that video. But it was around the time of the Eternals that the cracks really began to show. The Eternals was a bit of an experimental, artistic, more adult-centric film. It wasn't rated R, not by any stretch, but it felt more adult. It felt less comic booky. It felt more serious. Was it the shot in the arm that Marvel was hoping for? No. It did make back its money, and I would argue more than so, especially in a post-COVID world. But after the Eternals, we had Spider-Man No Way Home, a film that almost broke $2 billion. And thus, the MCU is alive and well. After which, we had a streak of Doctor Strange 2, we had Thor 4, and then we had Black Panther 2. And it was a bunch of dips and valleys. They all made bank, don't get me wrong, they all made money, but there was a question about the quality of the filmmaking. I remember in Thor, I don't know if you remember the CGI complaints when it came to, well, Doctor Strange and his weird eye, and then Thor and this poor kid. It felt like the MCU was in flux. It was trying to balance itself out. It was also around this time that DC, technically Marvel's biggest competitor, made one of its few smart choices. The Rock had tried and failed to become the kingpin of the DCEU, trying to position himself as the big bad to Superman and probably the Justice League as a whole, but his bid failed. Famously, and not so fun fact, Henry Cavill had Andy Garcia, The Rock's ex-wife, as his manager. Once this failed bid happened, Henry Cavill actually fired her because he felt like he was a used pawn, which he kind of was. Henry, you deserve better. In October 2022, The Batman was released, showing that quality really does stack over quantity. The Batman was a breath of fresh air, a great detective film. Granted, somewhat adult and grounded, those are a bit overplayed, but the fact is, it was very different from everything that Marvel, the DCEU, and even Sony was putting out. It was a different kind of movie, and it worked with audiences. It still made bank. Yes, it has Batman, but I'd also argue the quality of the storytelling is why it did so well. Matt Reeves is a generational talent as a director, as is Robert Pattinson. When these two got together, they cooked. I would argue as well as Christopher Nolan and... what is his name? Christian Bale. That's his name. Additionally, WBD made the smartest choice that they've made in a very long time when they gave James Gunn the keys to the kingdom to make whatever movie he wanted. And they gave him the most popular character that they have, arguably the most recognizable superhero in the world, Superman. The man who was responsible for making one of the most obscure comic book teams, a team even the hardcores barely knew about, and made them household names. Now, if he can do that with Star-Lord, imagine what he can do with Superman. October 2022 was a seismic shift because with James Gunn at the helm, 2023 and 2024 would be significant years that would reshape the comic book industry, well, film industry at least. 2023 would see the shotgun release of not one, but 4 DC films in a single year. We start off with Shazam, which was fine. It was fine. The first one was better, but it was fine. And then we had The Flash, which had like an Ezra Miller size anchor to it that sunk it. I was so sure it was going to break $1 billion. I think it maybe broke 400 mil, if that. And then we had Blue Beetle, which is great, and I won't hear shit about it. Aquaman, the first Aquaman, was the only $1 billion film in the DCEU. So you would kind of expect Aquaman 2 to make a big splash. Barely broke 400 mil. And with that, the DCEU was dead with a wet fart. Pun intended, sorta. Also, I'll die on the hill that those films were released in the wrong order. I strongly believe The Flash should have been the last movie to kind of hit the reset button, but I digress. DC released 4 films in a single year, and James Gunn announced that DC would be going like a soft reboot / break to reset and course correct.
This first chapter is called Gods and Monsters.
From December 2023 to July of 2025, there would be no DC film releases, with the exception of Joker 2 Electric Disappointment. Some of you will get that joke, and I appreciate you. Now, on the other side of the fence, Marvel was in a slightly similar position. Disney relied heavily on Marvel and Star Wars, and that is just not a sustainable business model, like at all. By 2023, it was very clear that we were being oversaturated with MCU content. In 2022, while we only had 3 movies, we also had 5 shows and I think like 2 or 3 TV specials, just in oversaturation of Marvel. In 2023, we had 3 films and 3 shows, but I believe this is where we had the breaking point. While Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was amazing, we also had The Marvels, which I will argue is not that bad of a film. It did not kill the MCU. Then we had Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which did not kill the MCU, but it definitely damaged their new heavy hitter, Kang, which, I mean, if you want him to be a Thanos level threat, why do you have him beat by a single Avenger? I'm just saying. It's very clear that between the dips in viewership and money, Disney was becoming concerned that their cash cow was crashing very quickly. A lot of cuz. Anyway, between all that, Disney decided to put the reins back on Marvel and limited them to no more than 2 to 3 films a year and no more than 2 to 3 shows per year, trying to maximize quality over quantity, which is the right call. For the record, I do blame bad writing for the lack of quality in the MCU, much in the same way that DCEU was not perfect, bad writing. I blame the writing, but again, that's just me. All that said, Marvel finally also decided to start employing showrunners, which, yeah, Kevin, that's like standard industry practice, I'm just saying. In 2024, Marvel only had 1 major release in theaters, the mega hit that is Deadpool and Wolverine. While it did lean pretty heavy on nostalgia, it did help to stabilize Marvel while it was in a transition period. They also brought back RDJ to put butts in seats, which I'm still going to argue is the wrong decision. There's something there to have like a failed Tony Stark dealing with our current Peter Parker. There's something there. Still think it was the wrong decision, but I digress again. RDJ was brought back, Kang will be killed off, and the Avengers' future is a lot more clear. 2024 was a reset in more ways than one for just Marvel and DC. We also had Sony and their Spider-Verse, but without Spider-Man, floundering horrendously, while Morbius was terrible. Madam Web, I would say, is probably worse because it had a lot more potential. Like, I could see where the whole Terminator thing... I have a rewrite on that. Go watch that video. Again, more shameless plugs. I apologize. Not really. Anyway, that said, we had Venom 3 released this year after Madam Web, and it felt soulless. It felt like they were playing it a little too safe. Supposedly, there may have been multiple rewrites. Supposedly, the original plot for Venom 3 was going to involve Eddie Brock trying to protect a 10-year-old Peter Parker, which I don't know how that would have worked in this timeline, but okay. They're also going to release Kraven the Hunter this year, which I'm sure that's going to break the bank. With all this said, did Joker Folie à Deux kill the comic book movie industry? No. No, it did not. If anything, this is a symptom. It's only going to get stronger and get better. With James Gunn course correcting, Marvel course correcting, and Sony, this is good. This is mostly a good thing. From what I can tell, the only thing that's going to exist outside of the DCU is going to be the Batman universe, which, yeah, let them cook. Don't touch that. I just finished the Penguin video incoming. That one's going to be a bitch to write, but that's going to be fun. Man, Go watch The Penguin. That thing's great. Go watch The Penguin and come back. Did you watch it? It was great, right? Now, what do you think of all this doom and gloom? Did you think the comic book industry is dead? You probably didn't. Of course, you're watching this video. That said, please do us a favor. Like and subscribe. We'd greatly appreciate it. We're trying to grow. And yeah, see everybody.